So on behalf of the Wellness Council, thanks for being here today. We've got Dr. Clayton Bell, and he's going to give some shout outs to John and Virginia. But we've got a great presentation. I don't want to waste any time, so he can have all of it.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming today. I am really excited to be here. This is our second Food is Medicine presentation. We did one last year too, and it was a huge success, and so I'm really glad to have you all here today. And just so I kind of get a little bit better idea of who all I'm talking to, can you please raise your hand if you work here in the medical center? Okay, so that's pretty much everybody. Cool. Okay, so raise your hand if you're a nurse. Awesome. Okay, thank you so much for coming. And I want to give a special shout out to y'all because it's Nurses Week, right? So if you are a nurse again, I want you to please stand up. Awesome. And I want everybody else in here to give them a great round of applause. All right. So thank you very much. I truly, sincerely believe that you nurses are really the unsung heroes of our medical center. Who in here is a football fan? Okay, so we got a lot of Tennessee Vols fans. Okay, cool. So it's kind of like in football, right? So, you know, you see like maybe the quarterback or the running back and the receiver, you know, and they score the touchdowns and they get a lot of the glory and everything. But the people that really, truly win the games that are on the front lines are going to be your linemen. And that's the difference between like a Super Bowl champion team or national champion team and a decent mediocre team. And those are the folks that they don't always get all the glory and all the praise. And so I want to just explicitly acknowledge you nurses today, saying you are the ones that win the games for us as an institution and for our patients on an individual level. So I sincerely appreciate everything that y'all do. So thank you very much for that. So as we get into this presentation today, I really want us to think about inspiration, innovation, and influence. Now, we are an academic university here, okay, University of Tennessee Medical Center. So I think it is extremely important for us to be on the cutting edge of medicine and science, to be innovative and to implement that science into our practice. Because as y'all know, medical practice usually lags about 10 or 15 years behind science, okay? So we want to kind of be at the forefront of that. All right, and so we want to inspire our patients, sincerely inspire them, and we want to influence them to make good, healthy decisions, and this is what a lot of this is about today. All right, so to begin with, let's play a little game, okay? So, like I said, this is going to be an interactive presentation for everybody. So what I want you to do is we're going to go through this set of top 10 reasons for doctor visits in the U.S. And as we go one by one, I want you to raise your hand if you think nutrition has any impact on that at all. Okay, so let's start with skin disorders. Okay, very good. All right, how about osteoarthritis or joint disorders? Does food have an impact on that, right? Who has noticed that themselves personally? Okay, so I'm 35. I've never had arthritis in my life. I know a couple Thanksgivings ago, we went home, and I'm not a big drinker, but I had maybe on average 2 or 3 drinks a night for about 4 to that 10 nights we were on vacation. And I didn't eat a ton of sweets, but I ate way more sweets than I normally do, my desserts, and then I overate, even the healthy stuff. When we came back, I felt so crappy. I had arthritis in my knees. I had never experienced that. And then so I had to just clean my whole diet up, get all the sugar out, you know, straighten up, and then it went away in a few days. But I can't imagine what that feels like on a daily basis. And I can't tell you how many patients I see on a daily or a weekly basis. And when they make some of these dietary changes, their arthritis just gets magically better, as do their skin conditions and a lot of these other things we'll talk about. All right, how about back problems? Y'all think food has any influence on that? Right? Yeah, so if you weigh maybe 150 versus 200 versus 250, right? They can be influenced by food. That might cause a little back pain. How about cholesterol? Right, obviously, okay? So when we're talking to folks about cholesterol, who goes straight to a statin and who actually approaches food as a medical intervention? Yeah, let's be real, people. We're not trained in this at all. When I was in medical school, I had 2 lectures in nutrition. And I had way more lectures in statins and over 100 lectures in different pharmacology interventions, okay? There's a time and a place for everything, but I think it's really important for us as an institution and as a medical society in general to really educate ourselves because these are really strong therapies. So upper respiratory conditions, including asthma, food, yeah. How about dairy? Absolutely. It triggers a lot of asthma problems. Okay, how about anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder? Yes, we've found that one of the very best ways to cause someone to be depressed or to exhibit a sickness behavior is to actually inject them with inflammatory cytokines. I don't know who signs up for those studies, okay? But they instantaneously get depressed and anxious. So when you eat the standard American diet, you're essentially doing the exact same thing, okay? How about chronic neurological disorders? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. How about high blood pressure? Yeah. Okay, how about headaches and migraines? Yes. Yeah. A lot of people have food sensitivities, right? Different things that influence that. And then how about diabetes? So it looks to me like, as a consensus, food influences every single one of these. Would that be correct? Okay. All right, so let's go through how about the leading causes of death? Does food have an influence on heart disease? Yeah, big time, right? How about on cancer? Yes, and this is something that's very near and dear to my heart because I work in the Cancer Institute, and I've been lucky enough to share a really incredible life with several people that have experienced the experience of cancer. And nutrition has such a huge impact on our body's ability to heal itself from that cancer, okay? So I'm going to really focus on that today as I go through this for y'all. Okay, how about lower respiratory diseases? Yeah, food could potentially have an influence on that, right? I'll show you later, if you eat sugary foods, it suppresses your immune system, so you're way more likely to get things like upper respiratory infections, colds, viruses, that kind of stuff. Accidents, that too. Stroke, obviously, right? That's going to be food-related. Stroke's essentially, for the most part, a heart attack in the brain, okay? So yeah, definitely cardiovascular, food-related. Alzheimer's disease, yeah, very much potentially could be a contributor to that. Diabetes, for sure. I talked about suppressing of the immune system. Yeah, a lot of kidney disorders. People don't know, but a lot of too much excess animal protein really damages the kidneys, okay? And then intentional self-harm, well, if you are feeling really crappy because you've been eating a really high inflammatory diet and that might have predisposed you to, let's say, anxiety or depression, yeah, then indirectly that could even influence things like suicide, which is crazy. So food essentially has an impact on every single aspect of our lives, okay? All right, so essentially this is one of the foundations of our health. You know, and Amy could attest to this. She's our dietitian over at the Cancer Institute. She can tell you. So diet right here at the core, okay? Other things that are really, really important. Exercise. You know, do we exercise or are we sedentary? Do we play desk jockey and sit in a desk all day for 8 hours a day? You know, I know I do. I have to be really intentional. I'm always making excuses. Well, let me get up and get that for you. Let me get a handout so I can literally get up out of my seat, go sit down, squat down, pull a handout out and give it to the patient. Let me wash my hands several times so I can at least get up, move around the room, right? Otherwise, what happens, you're sitting there and stuck, and an hour later, you notice you haven't moved. And, oh man, my neck hurts, and my back hurts, and everything else. But stress. And the more I learn about this, and this is a whole nother lunch and learn, okay? But I think this is honestly just as important as food. I think you can eat the best foods in the world, but if you're really, really stressed out, you're still setting yourself up for trouble. And I could tell you some personal stories there too. That's another lecture for another time. And then sleep. Sleep is super important. So when people are trying to lose weight, they're always focusing on the food, but I guarantee you the best time to lose weight is when you're sleeping. And it's not uncommon. When I used to check my weight with scales, which I don't anymore, but when I used to, I would notice I would lose anywhere between 3 and 5 pounds in the middle of the night when I went to sleep, which is really crazy. And I don't know where it all goes because I'm not urinating that much. You know, so I really don't physiologically understand that one, but it's true. We lose several pounds while we sleep. And so people that are chronically sleep deprived and only sleeping 5-6 hours a night, they could easily drop quite a bit of weight if they would increase their sleep. All right. So now that we've talked about the foundations of health, we have a little bit more insight into Plato when he said, the cure of many diseases is unknown to physicians because they're ignorant of the whole. For the part can never be well unless the whole is well. Okay? All right, so we have a very reductionistic society in general, okay? And in medicine, we're very, very, very much reductionistic. So we just focus on the heart, or just focus on the cholesterol, or just focus on the cancer, right? But at the core, these are disequilibriums within the system, okay? Instead of focusing on the symptoms, i.e. disease, we really need to be looking at the whole, okay? Or in addition to. Okay. So I told you earlier that part of what we want to do as we're celebrating Nurses Week and everything is we want to innovate, we want to inspire, you know, essentially we want to teach. And that is really what the word doctor means. It's Latin from the word docere, which means to teach, to educate, to inspire. It's from Cicero's De Oratore. So that's what doctor really means. It doesn't mean to prescribe pharmaceuticals, okay? Now those are tools, okay? And you better believe if I have a really bad infection, I'm going to take antibiotics, okay? And I've erred on the side of being too natural. And now I'm just going to use tea tree oil. I'm just going to use tea tree oil. And then, which is great. It's a great antibacterial, antifungal. It's wonderful. But if you have a really bad infection because you've been down in Haiti and you knocked a chunk out of your elbow when you were mountain biking, okay, you might need some antibiotics, and I did. You know what I mean? And when my arm couldn't straighten out all the way and it was that puffy, it's time. So we want to use the best of both worlds, right? Let's use cutting-edge medicine. Let's use our pharmaceuticals when we need to and when it's acute. But the best way to prevent chronic diseases is through how we live our lives. And it's what we put on our plate every day. Okay, so nutrigenomics. Anyone ever heard this word before? Awesome. Yeah, we got a few people who do. Cool. So essentially what this means is food is not only medicine, food is not only community, okay? Food is not only social, food is literally information for your body. Every single bite of food that you put in your mouth, whether it was that healthy veggie wrap that was so generously donated today from Morrison's or from John and Mike over there, thank you guys, to whether you get some ice cream, okay, which tastes super yummy, right? That radically changes your gene expression, okay? So, you always hear about your genetics, right? And then people have this misnomer that, oh, well, I got diabetes because my dad got diabetes, or I got cancer because my mom had cancer, or what have you. And to be totally honest, that's not true. It's really not. That's just something, that's a fallacy that we've fallen into and believe. But it appears that only about 5 or 10% of all cancers are really due to inherited genetic mutations. So like a Ewing sarcoma would be a really good example of that. Some of these pediatric cancers. But, even we think about like BRCA mutations, right, which are tumor suppressor genes in breast cancer. But the vast, vast, vast majority of women that have breast cancer don't have BRCA mutations, okay? These are environmental conditions. These are societal and cultural diseases that, unfortunately, some of us get hit with, okay? I don't even want to say it's not even the fault of the individual. It's the collective fault of society at large, right, that propagates these lifestyle things that predispose to this, all right? And food is a huge influence on that. So it appears that about 35% of all cancer in the U.S. are really due to food, all right? Even more so for breast, endometrial, pancreatic, gallbladder, and the highest is actually in colorectal and prostate cancers, okay? So let's go a little bit deeper into that. So epigenetics. So essentially this just talks about non-mutational events that alter gene expression. So to kind of put it in a nutshell for you, you got your DNA, right? You'll get some mutations that acquired throughout lifetime. Hopefully if you eat really good foods with lots of antioxidants, your DNA repair mechanisms will be a lot stronger. You can go back and fix those. You get cancer that way, less likely as well. But in general, you have this alphabet, okay? And your alphabet can read very, very, very different sentences, different paragraphs, different chapters that essentially make the story of your life, okay? And it can say, I am very sick, I have disease, or it can say, I am full of vitality and health and wellness. You have the exact same 26 letters in that alphabet, okay? But it was the ones that you chose to use to make the words that essentially manifested into your perception, your experience of your health and your current life, okay? All right, so that's essentially what this epigenetics talks about. And there's different mechanisms here, okay? We have methylation, which, has anyone here heard of methylation before? Right, sometimes I'll even check MTHFR mutations or homocysteine as a marker for that in my patients to look for this. So essentially what methylation does is it rolls up these genes tighter where they're not going to be transcribed, okay? So that's really, really good if we have a tumor promoter gene. We want to wrap that guy up where he can't get out, okay? We also have different things like acetylation, ubiquination, phosphorylation, okay? And some of these can actually unroll it, which is really important if it's a tumor suppressor gene like a BRCA, okay, to actually downregulate these cancers. And the cool thing is you don't have to know. You don't have to say, oh, I'm going to eat 2 pieces of spinach and I'm going to eat 1 heart of artichoke and I'm going to have a little bit of turmeric. You don't need to know any of that. Your body has this natural intelligence. It does all of it for you, okay? And we all intuitively know the foods that are healthy, right, and some of the foods that are less healthy. So it's really just tapping into that natural intelligence instead of trying to micromanage everything as far as I'm going to have this many grams of protein and this many grams of carbohydrate. And there's a time and a place for that, as Amy can tell you. But for the most part, if you just eat real food, you don't have to worry about counting all the calories. And like I said, obviously there's always nuances, right? So please take everything that I say as a generality, okay, with a grain of salt. Now, in specific situations, obviously we're going to custom tailor that to the person and to the condition. All right, so this is a great article. I love this article. And if you Google precautionary principle on cancer and food, this will pop up, and it's really awesome. So they basically went through and read through the 2007 World Cancer Research Fund, American Institute for Cancer Research reports. And what they did is they basically distilled it down to 6 things to help prevent cancer. And it was limiting or avoiding dairy to reduce the risk of prostate cancer. Okay, and that one was really a surprise to me. I didn't realize that, so I started taking care of a lot of guys with prostate cancer, and I'm going through their food inventory, and that kept coming up over again and again and again and again. This really high milk intake since they were kids. And then we were in Tumor Board the other day, and we had several guys with prostate cancer. I'm like, well, let me look up some data so when I make this comment, I can sound intelligent and quote a study and not just say, don't drink milk to all the rest of the doctors. And when I pulled it up, I was shocked to find that men that had been recently diagnosed with prostate cancer, there was 2 groups. The group that drank 3 or more servings of milk a day, of full-fat milk, versus those that had less than 1 serving of milk a day. Guess who was more likely to die from the prostate cancer? The people that drank milk. You know how much more likely they were? 6 times more likely to die. That's a lot. Just by drinking milk. And that's a really strong medical intervention. You got prostate cancer, don't do any dairy. Period. Done. Maybe we could argue for some probiotics that are like in a organic, plain yogurt. But by and large, milk, cheese, ice cream, get it out of the diet immediately. So how about number 2? Limiting or avoiding alcohol to reduce the risk of cancers in the mouth, pharynx, larynx, esophagus, colon, or rectum, and the breast. So pretty much anywhere the alcohol is going to go through, right? And then the breast. Now, don't get me wrong. I like to have a drink from time to time, okay? That's fine. It's just like these foods that we talk about. If it's your birthday and you want to have a piece of cheesecake, have a piece of cheesecake and a glass of wine. It's more, do we want to be smoking all the time every day? Do we want to be drinking all the time every day? Do we want to eat these foods all the time every day? Probably not. At least not if we want to live a long time and feel good, okay? And then avoiding red and processed meat to reduce the risk of cancers in the colon and rectum. And I'll show you a slide on this in a minute, okay? And avoiding grilled, fried, and broiled meats to reduce the risk of cancers in the colon, rectum, breast, prostate, kidney, and pancreas. So it actually matters how you cook your foods too, okay? For instance, with vegetables, we worry about, well, if I cook them this way or that way, I might lose some nutrients, but it's actually a lot more dangerous when it comes to meats. The higher you cook the temperature, the more carcinogenic it gets. Now, hypothetically, if you were a vulture or a coyote, you could eat raw meat and it could not be cancerous. But unfortunately, as a human, we don't have, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but we don't have the GI tract that has an acidity that's that low to actually process that. We'd get sick and we'd get all kinds of parasites and bacteria and we'd be throwing up everywhere. So we have to cook our meat before we can eat it. The actual process of cooking the meat actually creates carcinogenic substances like heterocyclic amines, though, okay? And so the higher temperature you cook the meat at, the more carcinogens, the more cancer we essentially get, okay? So when you do cook your meat, you want to cook it at a much lower temperature. If you're cooking on the grill, it's actually real important to not let any of those fat molecules drop down and hit the fire, okay? That creates a lot more of the polyaromatic hydrocarbons. And I've actually had several guys with lung cancer that were really young, super healthy, fit guys like my age, and they smoked meat competitively, and they got lung cancer. And all that smoke coming off that smoked meat is actually even more carcinogenic than eating the smoked meat itself. So that's interesting. All right, now let's flip that. What's protective? Okay, consumption of soy products during adolescence to reduce the risk of breast cancer in adulthood and to reduce the risk of recurrence and mortality from women who have had breast cancer. Hold on a second. My doctor told me not to eat soy because I had breast cancer. Who's heard that? Yeah. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of misinformation on the internet. And then healthcare providers, honestly, they don't know. They're scared because, there's phytoestrogens in soy or flaxseed, so we probably shouldn't eat that. And that's actually not true. I won't get into this, a whole other lecture. I have another presentation on this. But essentially, soy acts as a natural SERM. It acts like a tamoxifen, okay? It actually blocks that alpha estrogen receptor that can cause breast cancer tumor growth. What soy also does, it binds preferentially, much more strongly, to the beta receptor, okay, of estrogen, which is actually going to be more in your bones, in your brain, for strong bones, good mental health, but also that downregulates cellular proliferation in the breast, okay? So it's protective in all ways. So it's good. So women in Japan, do you think they get very much breast cancer? No, they don't. They eat a lot of soy. They eat a lot of vegetables. Now, they moved to the United States within a generation or two. Guess what? Their breast cancer risks are the same as ours. Did their genes change? Raise your hand if you think their genes changed that much to cause breast cancer. Raise your hand if you think their diet changed that much to cause breast cancer. Yeah, that's the reason. And then how about fruits and vegetables? So fruits and veggies dramatically reduce the risk to all these foreign causes of cancer, okay? So here's a great little slide. I like this, okay? Food is medicine right here. What are the foods that cause cancer? Pretty much every single fruit, pretty much every single seed, nut, vegetable, they all pretty much block cancer growth, okay? And you pretty much pick your favorite one. You know, green tea is a great one too. So people ask me, what's the best vegetable? It's like exercise, you know, it's the one that you'll eat every day. It's the exercise that you'll do. Which one do you like? Do that one, you know, I don't care. What do you like? You know, and obviously there's specific vegetables, like if you have breast cancer, we want you to have more cruciferous vegetables, help detoxify the extra estrogen from your body. Iodine gets rid of extra estrogen as well. Tomatoes are great for prostate cancer, okay? There's specifics and nuances, okay? Flax seeds are amazing for breast cancer as well. Green tea is good for decreasing any kind of cancer. All right, so here's kind of going back. This is a monograph by the World Health Organization. And so for an organization this big to make a claim this strong, the evidence has to be pretty much insurmountable and just like 100% like this is just a science. So what they came out with and they declared a few years ago was that processed meat is a carcinogen. Straight up. No and, if, or buts about it. These foods, hot dogs, ham, bacon, sausages, corned beef, deli meats, beef jerky, canned meats, meat sauces, these cause cancer. It's just like smoking a cigarette. It's not a question of if it does cause cancer, it's a question of how many can you smoke before you get lung cancer. Okay? And a lot of people live to be 90, they're still smoking, no problem. Okay? Other people get hit when they're 30 or 40 or 50, and that's probably where that genetic susceptibility comes in. Same way with these foods. Okay? We had our nieces over at the house a couple years ago, and they asked me one time, they go, Uncle Clayton, do you eat hot dogs? And I was like, no. And they go, why not? I was like, because they cause brain tumors. And they didn't really know what to say about that. And I thought about just telling them, oh, it doesn't matter, but I was like, I'm not going to lie to them. You know what I mean? It's like, So anyway, but it's true. And it appears that red meat is also probably a carcinogen to humans, okay? Increasing colorectal, pancreatic, and prostate cancer. And so I work with our colorectal surgeons here, and I see literally every single one of Dr. Andrew Russ's patients before they go to surgery. And what I find over and over and over and over and over again, and it happened again just yesterday, but it's no water, okay? So people drink 1 or 2 cups of water a day. They hardly ever eat vegetables, so literally maybe a couple a week. They have minimal fiber in their diet, and they literally eat processed or red meat usually several times a day. And it's just kind of the recipe that generate, and Amy could probably, yeah, same thing, yeah, same thing. All right, so let's go through here, okay? Now this is a really important slide, okay, and there's some nuances on here that are super, super, super important. Okay, now if you're under the age of 65, and this specifically was done on the NHANES criteria, this was looking at over 6,000 people, between the ages of 50 to 65, but I would extrapolate, this would be anyone under the age of 65. If you were in the high animal protein intake category, which means you got more than 20% of your caloric intake, let's say if you're on a 2,000 calorie diet, it's going to be 400 calories a day, okay? Which is essentially 100 grams of protein, okay? From these animal sources, and that could be dairy, that could be meat, could be any of them, eggs, what have you, you were 4 times more likely to die from cancer or from diabetes. That's pretty intense, okay? Now, if you got all that protein from plant sources, organic soy foods, nuts, seeds, legumes, lentils, beans, chickpeas, split peas, whatever, no increased risk factor. So it's not the protein, it's the type of protein, okay? Same way for like chronic kidney disease, okay? It's the type of protein that really causes all that damage. Now, very, very, very important. I'm not saying meat is bad, okay? There's no such thing as good or bad. It's all information, it's all contextual. When you're over the age of 66, it became protective. The people that had the most proteins, whether that's from plants or from animals, were much less likely to die. Less than half as likely to die from these diseases, okay? And the reason is, and it's not like you turn 65 and you just automatically start eating meat, right? I mean, there's obviously a transition, right? It's like all shades of gray here, okay? But what happens is the body becomes more catabolic. And if we don't have enough protein, we tend to get essentially like muscle breakdown, right? It leaves us more feeble. You get, deterioration essentially of the body. So it's really, really important to feed it with good fuel sources. Okay, so my takeaway point from this, if you stick with the plant proteins, you're safe across the board. No worries, whether you're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 or 90. Okay, if you're under 60, please consider the benefits of getting the vast majority of your nutrients, especially protein, from plants. Okay? If you're over 65, what I would recommend is get clean sources. Get organic, grass-fed, free-range, pasture-raised, wild-caught. Okay? That's going to serve two purposes. Number one, it's going to be a lot healthier for you. It's going to have a lot less pesticides, a lot less hormones, everything else. Okay? It's going to have a lot higher percentage of omega-3 fatty acids, which are anti-inflammatory, which we'll get into, and a lot lower percentage of omega-6 fatty acids, like arachidonic acid, that predispose to not only cancer, but pretty much every other disease on the planet. Okay? The second thing is they're way more expensive. So you'll eat a lot less of them. Okay? So it's a win-win situation. You can't go wrong, okay? All right, so this just kind of goes through IGF-1. So we see the high-protein animal intake diet increases IGF-1. And I won't bore you with all these cancer metabolic pathways, but essentially that's what it does. Leads to mTOR, and you get NF-kappa beta, yada, 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 you get cancer, okay? So you can go through this at your own disclosure. Okay, so carcinogens, okay? And it's not just the smoked meats, okay? Cigarettes obviously are carcinogen. We know that alcohol can be a carcinogen if it's consumed too much. But how about these guys? Right? Straight up, okay? I saw some really good articles recently. Guess how many sodas it takes a week to increase women's risk of breast cancer by 50% or increase men's risk of prostate cancer by 50%. Raise your hand if you think it's 1 a week. Raise your hand if you think it's 2 a week, 3 a week, 4 a week, 5 a week, 6 a week, more than 1 a day. 3 a week. 3 sugary drinks a week increases breast cancer, prostate cancer by 50%. That includes Cokes, that includes sweet tea, that includes juice. Okay? Yeah, juice is not healthy. If you want to squeeze your own vegetable juice with like ginger and lemon and greens and some beets and stuff, yeah, go for it. But drinking orange juice is not a healthy option. Okay? It's a treat. Yeah, sure. Yeah, same way. So an apple juice, you know how it tastes really, really yummy? Yeah. So she asked, what about apple juice? Great question. Apple juice tastes really, really yummy. So what you want to do is eat an apple. No, that's a great question. No, seriously, that's a perfect question. And if you like orange juice, you eat an orange. If you like grape juice, eat grape. That's a perfect question. Thank you so much for asking. That was a perfect question. You helped out a lot of people. Thank you. That's a great question, okay? One more, and then we're going to get to questions afterwards.
I was just wondering, are diet sodas bad?
Diet sodas are actually worse than regular sodas. You don't get the sugar, but unfortunately what happens with diets, and it's a great question, thank you. She goes, are diet sodas bad too? Diet sodas are actually worse for you than regular sodas, okay? And the reason is because they have all these fake sugars. Those fake sugars dramatically disrupt our gut microbiome. And as we're learning more and more and more and more, the gut microbiome is one of the most important factors on our immunity, on our mood, okay? And every other aspect of our life. Okay, we're actually got several different research projects going right now with the University of Tennessee and then also with Oak Ridge National Laboratories. And what we're actually doing with them is we're doing cutting-edge microbiome research in different cancers. Okay, and we're actually finding different biomarkers in these different cancers and showing that the gut microbiome is probably one of the biggest reasons that we either get cancer or we don't get cancer. Okay, and also we found huge correlations there with, are we obese, are we skinny, eating the exact same foods. A lot of it just depends on your gut microbiome. Okay, are you depressed or are you happy? Gut microbiome. It's crazy. What food choices do you make? Gut microbiome. If you have a dysbiotic gut microbiome, it literally makes you crave sugar. because it wants to feed those bacteria and yeast that are living inside of you, okay? And there's direct correlation and direct neural signaling between the gut and the brain, okay? And the enteric nervous system is a completely autonomous, independent nervous system all within its own, okay? That's that gut feeling you get sometimes. You know, I get that gut feeling to do this or that. I mean, it's because you have literally a brain inside your gut. Okay, and the vast majority of your immunity, about 70% of it is actually associated in your gut. Okay? So you got to protect those guys. And there is somewhere between 10 and 100 times as many bacterial and even more than that viral cells on us and within us than there is human cells. So we're actually more microbial than we actually are human, which is really interesting. And the genes are even way more. We have like 20,000 genes as a human, and there's like 100 times that many bacterial. So if you actually want to kind of step back and look at it metaphysically or existentially, the question is, who's driving who? Are we humans with some bacteria living in us, or are we an entire ecosystem, an entire universe that's only conscious of itself as a human? It's really interesting.
Hey,
Okay.
Clayton.
Yes?
Just want to interrupt real quick. If you need to leave, because we said it was 30 minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Feel free to leave. Don't feel like you have to stay, but obviously keep going.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, anyone that needs to get up and go to work, I get it. You know, I got clients at, at 1 o'clock today too and everything, so you're not going to offend me, I promise. So it's not just changing your immune system. It's not just changing your genetic expression. A lot of it is just straight up sugar, okay? So like I said, I didn't come here to knock on meats or anything, okay? I just came here to educate people on food. So what sugar does is anytime you have a sugary beverage, anytime you go get a piece of cake, you get a piece of candy, you get some ice cream, you get any of that, what's going to happen is you're going to get a sugar spike, right, which is not good obviously for things like diabetes and everything, but even more so, you decrease your phagocytotic index, which is your white blood cells' ability to actually gobble up bad bacteria, viruses, cancers, that kind of stuff that are in your body, okay? And you actually retard this process for several hours. You decrease the ability for it to actually do that, okay? So, and not only do you do that, but you also increase CRP, which is a biomarker we use called C-reactive protein, okay, which is inflammation in the body. And this goes up for several hours. So for instance, I'm so proud of our Cancer Institute because we took out all of the snack foods out of the Cancer Institute during chemotherapy infusions, okay? And I think that's really, and we kind of laugh about it, but I think it's a really, progressive thing, right? Because a lot of institutions are still doing that, and people don't know. People will literally eat foods that cause cancer while they're getting chemotherapy, okay? And it's just because they don't know. So it's really important that we educate ourselves and inform ourselves on this. But like I said, I'm real proud of us for being progressive in that manner and getting rid of that. Anyway, okay, so you have any kind of sugary food, you've basically suppressed your immune system for several hours. You've increased inflammation in your body for several hours. Okay, what mitigates this? Not eating those foods and fasting. I'm not good at fasting because I really like food, okay, a lot. But one of the best ways to not get cancer and to basically help out with any kind of other disease for the most part is actually eating less food, smaller quantities, eating less often, and essentially giving ourselves a fasting window. Every single society has done this throughout human history, pretty much until now. So whether it was for religious reasons like Ramadan or because it was a drought, right? We've never had the ubiquity of food that we have these days. Okay. So one of the questions that I have to ask myself, or that you might be asking yourself, is why is some of this information making me feel a little bit uncomfortable? Okay? So I feel uncomfortable because I want you to like me. Okay? I'm a people pleaser, right? But I also think at an academic institution, it's very important for us to present cutting-edge science so that you guys can make educated decisions, and even more so you can convey this on to your patients. Okay? Some of the other reasons we might feel a little uncomfortable is because we like these foods. We grew up with these foods, okay? So what we're feeling is actually a psychological phenomenon called cognitive dissonance, okay? And it's when psychological conflict results from incongruous beliefs and attitudes. And that's like, this food causes cancer, this food causes diabetes, this food causes heart attacks, but I really like the taste of it, right? Does everyone kind of feel that pull inside them right now? Yeah. We're all in this together, okay? We are all in this together. So this just kind of shows you guys, this is where I'm from, okay? I swear to God, I'm not up here preaching from a pulpit, okay, at all. I grew up on a cow farm. This is what I grew up eating, okay? This is SpaghettiOs. A homemade meal for us was a Tony's Pizza with mushrooms, all right? Yeah. And I just got to give a little shout out. My family's actually visiting this weekend in town, and they're right here. So it's actually my mom, my dad, and my sister and her partner. So they're in town, so they get a good chuckle out of this because how we grew up. And we grew up on a cow farm. This is one of our guys. We used to run 300 or 400 head of mama cows out there. When I was in college, every day I started off with a Mountain Dew and a Newport short cigarette. Okay? Yeah, so that probably is what propelled me to go over here. And anyway, kind of like slingshot back and forth, right, from one extreme to the other. So I tell you this because food has been something that I have personally struggled with for years, okay? I have the most addictive sweet tooth of anyone I know. I just can't eat it. Like when I'm on top of my game, like right now, you could put a cupcake or a bagel or candy or a donut in front of me. I'm cool. I don't want it. I take one bite and I have completely screwed myself again for 3 days. And it is a straight up addiction, okay? And it's actually harder to get off of sugar than it is to get off of cocaine, all right? Now, I've never been addicted to cocaine, but I've seen studies in mice, and they give the mice, they give them sugar water, or they give them cocaine. Guess what the mice chooses? We like sugar so much, if you're a baby, you can put your pinky in sugar water, put it in our mouth, and we won't cry anymore when you cut off the tip of our penis. That's how we do circumcisions. In family medicine, the baby cries. You put sugar on your finger and put it in his little mouth, and he quits crying, and you can just cut it right off. That's how much we like sugar. We are genetically hardwired to like sugar, right? Because back in the day when we were running around the forest, eat a berry, that's sweet. I'm going to keep eating that. Eat a fig or a piece of dirt, no taste, no sweetness, okay? So we evolved to seek these things like fat and like sugar. Okay, the problem is now that we've bioengineered these foods to basically biohack into our taste buds, right? And so now we're all essentially addicted to these things, okay? And so unfortunately, there's just a lot of propaganda out there. Who has a TV? Who watches TV? I'm sorry. That is a huge waste of your time and your brain. You are way too smart to be watching television, okay? You want to watch something fun or get a movie or Netflix? Yeah, go for it. But how much propaganda is there on the commercials? Yeah. Eat this or eat that, or by the way, after you ate that, try the little purple pill. You know what I mean? And then people come to us like, well, my TV said I should take this pill, so it's just, you will begin to think what you surround yourself with. If you read from great minds, you will think like those great minds. If you watch TV, and you watch, you know what I mean? And you see all these commercials, you're going to think that's normal to eat that way. You know what I mean? And it is in today's culture, but it also causes all these diseases. That's what I'm saying. So don't fall into this trap. I mean, that's what I heard. Beef, it's what's for dinner, I don't know if you guys remember the marketing campaign, probably back in the early 2000s. It was pork, the other white meat. Do you remember that one? Yeah, so that was really good. So I was an animal science major, and they kind of gave us the inside scoop to that. So all the white meat was the crappy meat they couldn't get rid of. So they said, what are we going to do with this? Let's start a marketing campaign and say it's the other white meat. Then everybody got pumped up about it, you know what I mean? And it tastes good, right? So it's like, yeah, what do we know? And this is the old food pyramid, which basically advocated all these really starchy, simple sugars that just drive up glycemic index and cause all the diseases that we see today. All right, so food sources of arachidonic acid. I'll go through this a little bit quicker just to kind of get you guys out on time. But essentially what we find is, and I'll show you in a minute what arachidonic acid is. It essentially is the precursor to inflammation, right? So if you have arthritis, if you have cancer, if you have any of these other chronic diseases, you want to knock down inflammation, okay? But the number one contributors to it in our country are actually chicken, okay? And so once again, it's important if you're going to eat chicken, get your chicken organic. Now, it's not because chicken has more arachidonic acid. Pork actually has a lot more, but the thing is we eat way more chicken in this country. And eggs, okay? So I actually eat eggs for breakfast every day, but I think it's really important if you're going to eat eggs, get pasture-raised eggs. Get them from a local farm. Don't get them from Tyson, okay? I've been in those chicken plants. You don't want to get your eggs from there, okay? And then beef and sausage and all those kind of things too. All right, so this is essentially what it does. So basically in our country, we spend billions of dollars every year on COX inhibitors, okay? And then also on things like aspirin, ibuprofen, Aleve, all these other to basically block this pathway, okay? And essentially the easiest way to do it though is just to cut it out of our diet. It's like trying to put out a fire with a water hose, but we keep adding wood to the fire at the same time. You just remove the wood, the fire will eventually go down and make your water hose a lot more effective. Okay, so just cut out these foods that are really high in arachidonic acid. Once again, really, really important that when you eat your meats and everything, get them organic. Okay, don't eat a lot of sugary foods. They're all going to drive inflammation. So what does inflammation do? Obesity, atherosclerosis, plaques, stroke, heart disease, peripheral artery disease, irritable bowel syndrome, infections, AIDS, erectile dysfunction. Okay, erectile dysfunction, that's a really good marker. If you're a man and you have trouble getting an erection, it's probably an early sign of cardiovascular disease. If it's happening in your penis, it's also happening in your brain and in your heart. Okay, so this is a really good indicator that I look for in guys that are having sexual dysfunction. Okay, asthma, arthritis, fibromyalgia, Alzheimer's, cancer, autoimmune, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, type 2 diabetes, and pretty much every single other chronic disease on the planet. This is the disease, folks. Cancer is not a disease. Cancer is a symptom. Okay, heart attack's not a disease. It's a symptom. The disease is underlying things like chronic inflammation and a disequilibrium within a system, which is based on the disease of improper lifestyle. That's the disease. Our culture and our society and the way we live is the disease. These are symptoms of the disease, okay, that we've basically classified nicely into sets of symptoms that we put a word around so we can contextualize and understand it better. All right, so this is what really a food pyramid should look like. This is based off of Dr. Andrew Weil's anti-inflammatory diet. So just key up, lots of veggies, lots of fruits, beans and legumes, the protein source. I like pasta alternatives, black bean noodles, red lentil noodles, all that kind of jazz. Whole grains, fresh fish, healthy fats, organic soy foods, things like mushrooms. And then you just want to kind of limit your protein depending on the person and your age. Herbs and spices are great, teas are good, some of the top. I won't go through this too much, just goes through omega-3 fatty acids. They're going to be in your fatty fish, your oils, your healthy oils like your olive oil and everything, walnuts, those type of things. And these are going to been shown to decrease inflammation, decrease anxiety, decrease depression, and all that. So it's really impressive. So you want to try to increase these guys and decrease those omega-6s like the arachidonic acid I showed you the chart of earlier. Okay? You have a pharmacy in your kitchen. Okay? Use more spices than salt and pepper. Seriously, this is one of the best ways, okay? Turmeric. Turmeric, now there's a few chemotherapy agents you don't want to use turmeric with, okay? But by and large, turmeric has the broadest body of evidence of any spice that I know of, okay? It's so good that we even package it in little pills and sell it to people, okay? And it's fairly expensive. And it works really, really well for arthritis and turning down all the different cancer pathways, okay? It's really effective for that. Cinnamon for blood sugar. How about ginger for women that have nausea when they're pregnant, okay? Or for going through chemotherapy. Ginger's great. Mint, peppermint. I gave a woman peppermint this morning for her irritable bowel syndrome. It works really, really well. So you have all these medicinal spices that have been used for thousands of years, and they're literally in your kitchen, okay? So Hippocrates said it very well several thousand years ago. He said, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." And there's a really nice Ayurvedic proverb that says, "When diet is wrong, medicine is of no use, and when diet is correct, medicine is of no need." It doesn't have to be complicated. Let it be simple. Michael Pollan said it best. He said, eat real food. So eat clean. Just eat real food. Mostly plants, not too much. It's really that simple. And then meats and sweets are treats. So when you eat them, enjoy them. Have fun with it. Don't shame yourself. Be like the French. Have fun with it. Enjoy your food. Enjoy your wine, right?
Do you eat to live or live to eat?
What's that?
Do you eat to live or live to eat?
There you go. Do you eat to live or live to eat? There you go. And then when you get 100, do whatever the hell you want. Okay? So, as is above, so is below. Okay? As is the macrocosm, so is the microcosm. All right? So what's good for us is good for our environment. Okay? What's good for our environment is good for us. Okay? So that's my last slide. I'm going to do the proverbial mic drop. I'm going to throw it over to John in Virginia, and I want to give a big shout out to them. Big shout out to John. Big shout out to Mike for bringing all this super healthy food in and for introducing. We got a really fun announcement here, okay, for the hospital too, that I'm going to throw it over to these guys.
Let me just make sure to really call out John. He prepped all this stuff for us today. So what we have on the back table for you to try, and hopefully you've enjoyed this afternoon, we have a fresh vegetable health wrap, and we have a hummus, spinach, feta cheese, and tomato sandwich, and these are all plant-based foods. We have added these to our patient menu. The next step we need to make is to get the pictures. John has taken some wonderful pictures of the products so we can put it on the Get Well network. It'll be on what we call our always available menu so that our patients are free to choose these kind of foods and hopefully make a small step toward being healthier. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's something that y'all can do too, right? Who in here has direct patient care? Cool. So when you do, please be an advocate. Like, educate your patients, because for the most part, probably no one's ever talked to them. Literally, I can't tell you how many people that I see that have these chronic, debilitating diseases that are induced by the food choices they've made, and no doctor, no nurse has ever actually set them down and just told them the truth. Okay? So please just be real with them. If you see them drinking a Coke, be like, hey, did you ever think that maybe there's a better alternative, or do you know what this does to you? Or if they're eating, like for instance, here's a really good example. I've seen a lot of people with diabetics, and they're sitting there trying to be healthy, and they're drinking orange juice, and they're eating muffins. You know what I mean? And it's like, hey, you know what? That's really not helping you at all. But no one's ever actually talked to them about that. They don't know. And if you don't know, you can't make a good choice, right? And the other big thing that's super, super important that I found to be really effective is non-judgmental awareness. There's no such thing as a good food or a bad food. It's just like, where are you trying to get? What are you trying to do to serve you? So I think if you go with that way, people are always receptive to it. I've never had anyone ever get mad at me or angry at me. I've always just had them tell me, well, how come no one ever told me this before? A lot of times, I defend us. I say it's because we didn't know. We're not educated to teach you how to take care of yourself. But now that you have this knowledge, please do spread it, share it, and help us, because we're bringing this into the hospital. We're bringing it to the cafeteria. We're working with Morrison's, and we want this to be more available to you. But it really comes down to choice. It's like when you walk in the cafeteria, or when your patient makes a choice, what do they choose? Do they choose the pot roast with gravy, or do they choose the veggie hummus wrap? And you can help influence that decision. You really can. And it comes down to, what do we choose, right? Because eventually, at the end of the day, this place, it's like every other place, is going to stock based on customer demand, okay? And so if we say, hey, we want really healthy foods, and we go buy those foods and vote with our money, that's what we're going to get. We're going to get more of it. And if we educate our patients, they're going to give higher Press Ganey scores for good foods. And they're not going to get upset when they didn't get their biscuits and gravy, okay? But if they don't know that's making them sick and killing them, they're going to keep eating it and be upset if they don't have that as an option. So please, as a group, as an organization, let's educate ourselves and let's support each other, because it's damn hard to make healthy food choices, okay? Especially when people bring in donuts every day, all right? So, John, you got anything you want to say, my friend?
No, I don't have anything. Happy Nurses Week to everybody. Appreciate what y'all do. And I'm always available if you come ask me questions, or if there's something you'd like to see in the cafe, or suggestions for the patients, just let me know.
Cool. Okay, Virginia, anything else?
Were there any questions? This is such a hot topic.
Yeah, we got a couple minutes, so if you got a question, yeah, we'll take your questions.
I have a question about your presentation.
Sure.
On the item of soy,
Yes. And thank you guys for coming that are heading out. Y'all have a beautiful day. Yeah. Yes,
on the
ma'am.
item of soy, what do you think about, because soy is one of the most genetically modified.
Great question. Thank you. Thank you so much for saying that.
And then on the sugar side,
Yeah.
what about stevia?
Yeah, another great question, okay? So I'll take the soy question first. So she asked, soy is one of the most genetically modified foods. It absolutely is. And unfortunately, it's one of those foods that have been subsidized by the U.S. government with the Farm Bill, soy, corn, wheat, all these foods. And these foods have become radically genetically modified, and they're essentially made kind of Roundup ready, okay? And what they do is they basically spray them down with glyphosate, which is Roundup, which essentially is carcinogenic. Now we know it causes cancer. It also creates intestinal permeability by increasing zonulin from the intestinal enterocytes. And so it's just totally, it's poison, not only to the bugs and the plants, but it's total poison to us too. So what you want to do is when you get soy, always, every single time, get organic soy. Okay, so hypothetically, it should not have any of that Roundup poison. Now I know there's contamination, and that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, but if you go with organic whole soy foods, that's organic tofu, organic tempeh, organic edamame, yeah, I think you're in a really good shape there. I would not encourage you to eat non-organic soy at all. Just like we probably honestly should not be eating non-organic wheat either, in all honesty, just because of the Roundup. And you know, Monsanto actually sold their business essentially so they could avoid all the lawsuits that would be coming, so they could basically rid themselves of that from all the Roundup cancer and such. Stevia is a great question. I am not a stevia expert. Now I know that if you grow stevia in your herb garden like my dad does, and you take a little piece of that off and you put it in your mouth, it is super sweet. Super sweet, and I think that is extremely healthy. The processing that the stevia goes through, I do not know enough about that to say if that is healthy or not. I do know that I liked it and was putting about 10 drops when it said to put 4 drops, and I got extremely gassy. So I quit using it. Probably, I don't know. I would have to defer. Amy, do you know much about stevia?
It really becomes a dose response thing.
Okay.
With what you experience.
Right.
If you use it the way they tell you to, it probably.
Yeah, probably been fine. Yeah, and Amy had a great answer. She goes, "There's probably a dose response thing there." So yeah, so probably if you get like an organic stevia that's minimally processed, probably a great alternative to definitely any kind of artificial sweeteners for sure, but probably better than some of your natural, still like just sugars though. Great question. Yes, ma'am.
What about protein supplements like Ensure? Because I heard
Yeah.
those are bad for you, but are they?
Yeah, so great question. So she said, what about protein supplements like Ensure? Are those bad for you? So that's kind of a double-sided question. So I'd say proteins, this is a lot more in-depth conversation, but protein supplements can be really helpful for people that don't have enough protein, like some of our, say, cancer patients that are having trouble keeping on weight, that kind of thing. And then there's better protein supplements and less great protein supplements. So my wife makes a really delicious protein smoothie every day, and we use a plant-based protein powder in that. That's a pea and hemp protein. And we put nuts in it, and she puts ground flax seeds in it, and a banana, and some organic unsweetened soy milk. That's a really healthy protein. Now there's some, like for instance, as a guy that's 35, I would not consume a lot of, say, whey protein personally. I think it's good for muscle mass. I don't want a bunch of increased cell proliferation and turnover at 35, okay? Ensure, I think if a person is on a very limited budget and they're having a lot of trouble keeping on weight, it's, it's something that gets nutrients in. Do I think it's a healthy source of fuel? No, I do not personally, okay? There's a lot better shakes out there. Premier shakes, I think, are cleaner. And then there's other, there's other shakes that are better than that. Some get kind of expensive. So it really kind of depends on, honestly, like, what's your condition? What are your resources? What can you do? What's your availability? So it's not, once again, not a right or wrong thing. They're just better or less advantageous. Great question. Any other questions? Hey, maybe one more question. We'll call it a day. We've answered all your questions. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it.